Archive, a repository and critical analysis of laughter in recorded music. With degrees in political science and Africana studies, Ms. Mallard has sought meaningful ways to synthesize her interests in public policy and the arts. Her master's thesis, Locating and Retracing the Modern Black Aesthetic in Hip-Hop, explores the intergenerational commonalities between hip-hop and the Black arts movement and the Harlem Renaissance. And she will be speaking on the laughing of the Black Medusa. So let's welcome Amalia Mallard.
Thank you. Greetings. I am Amalia Mallard, and this is The Laugh of the Black Medusa. I'm delighted to be here at MoPop again this year. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share with you why I think laughter in recorded music is something we all should be listening to and listening for. Laughing in music is generally seen as something that's so visceral, so natural, so fleeting, that it's hard to imagine that it could contain any significant meaning. But once that record becomes available for consumption, that laugh becomes part of a permanent document. Then it represents a conscious choice by the producer and or performer to keep that laugh on the record. So first I'd like to start by introducing you to the Laughing Archive, and then we'll talk about Medusa as a trickster figure.
But if you want,
sorry about that. In here.
You don't need my technical assistance.
Thank you. I appreciate that comic relief, especially we're talking about laughter. Laughter as device. So far, I've identified 3 different uses. As commentary, laughter can be used to enhance or support the main narrative. This is not, ha ha, that's so funny. This does not point to humor. For example, we have here Gil Scott-Heron's No Knock from 1972, which at the time was directed towards Richard Nixon's U.S. Attorney General, John Mitchell.
But if you're wise, no knocker, you'll tell your no knocking lackeys, ha! No knock on my brother's head, no knock on my sister's head, no knock on my brother's head, no knock on my sister's head, and double lock your door, because soon someone may be no knocking, ha ha, for you.
As a literary device, laughter can be used as punctuation. It's designed to fill a gap in the rhythm and or lyric. This is what's called a holy laugh. In 1942, Lydia Parrish described the holy laugh as a mirthless staccato in her book, Slave Songs of the Georgia Sea Islands. In 1982, the Cold Crush Brothers used the holy laugh as a way to transition from MC to MC on their record, At the Dixie. As a musical device, laughter can be used to establish mood. For example, Sly and the Family Stone's Running Away from 1971. Here, Rose Stone's staccato laugh helps to reinforce the theme that running away is pointless.
Running away to get away, ha 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 ha, you're wearing out your shoes.
So I've identified and archived 5 different types of laughter: the cuica, the wah-wah mute, ha ha ha, hee hee, and ha. The cuica is a West African percussive instrument introduced to Brazil during the transatlantic slave trade. It's also known as the laughing gourd, and it can be heard in many different genres. You can hear it clearly in the opening bars of Bob Marley's Could You Be Loved. It comes in just after the guitar. The wah-wah mute is a device that fits inside the bell of a trombone or a trumpet. This is what alters the sound. Wynton Marsalis can be heard making his trumpet laugh using the wah-wah on his song Pedro's Getaway from 1990. Ha ha ha. This is the easiest laugh to identify. It's a rolling laugh. The ha-has are connected, and it resembles what we hear in everyday conversation. Here's Memphis Minnie's Ball and Chain Blues from 1935. Michael Jackson. But here's a clip from 1929, Lottie Beeman Kimbrough's Going Away Blues. And lastly, ha, this is the holy laugh. Frequently it's used as to punctuate, but if you listen closely to Jackie Wilson's vocal agility on Baby Workout from 1963, you can hear him laugh mid-sentence.
Now it's plain to see, don't mean it's a natural fact. I like it like that, so work out. Yeah!
But laughing has not been without consequence. There is a laugh tax. On the one hand, when Desiree Feruz was arrested for laughing on day one of Jeff Sessions' U.S. Attorney General confirmation hearings, she faced up to 1 year in jail and $2,000 in fines. On the other hand, there is a long history of black folks not being allowed to laugh out loud, both literally and figuratively. Martin Luther King Sr., in his autobiography, shared the story of how when he was a little boy, he saw a black man lynched for laughing. Although Jim Crow laws define space and access, it is the Jim Crow etiquette which predetermined potential encounters, policing behavior, including laughter. The laughing barrel signifies a time during slavery and after, in which if a black person had the uncontrollable, irrepressible urge to laugh, they had to duck their head into a barrel to muffle the sound. The hostile backdrop of Jim Crow from 1877 to 1965 runs a parallel course with the invention of Edison's phonograph, the inception of the recording industry, and the flourishing of the music business. Therefore, it is a radical act to laugh and express genuine joy. This kind of subversion is also seen in the trickster stories. For example, Briar Rabbit is a prominent character in African American trickster folklore. Briar Rabbit is a sort of precursor to Bugs Bunny. The Disney movie, The Song of the South from 1946, reintroduced Briar Rabbit, Briar Bear, and Briar Fox to a broad audience, but it's a controversial retelling which has never been made available for home video. In this clip, we can see how Briar Rabbit deliberately uses laughter to escape.
You really dressed up for dinner? For my dinner. Cause I'm gonna barbecue you this very minute. On that fire. Hello? That's terrible. Now, wait a minute, Rabbit. Maybe I better explain something to you. I said I was gonna roast you on that fire. Now, is that something to laugh about? Well, I can't help laughing, Grandpa. I just been to my laughing place. And every time I start thinking about my laughing place, I can't help laughing. What's a laughing place? That's just a secret place I knows about.
If you identify with Briar Bear and Briar Fox, then you may be disappointed when I tell you they don't get to eat the rabbit. But if you identify with Briar Rabbit, then you'll be relieved to know that he escapes. He saves himself. He's a hero. But by this very principle, Medusa has been vilified. If you only see her as a monster, then it's a clear signal you don't know her story or you just can't relate. Medusa is an ancient mythical figure that persists in the collective imagination. Habitually, the primary task is to describe her appearance as if we could simply glean her essence from other people's adjectives. But have we ever paused to wonder, what did Medusa see? What is her story? Even her mythical demise eclipses her origin story. Medusa was practically a nun, a virgin completely devoted to Athena. That is, until she was raped in Athena's temple by Poseidon. Okay. That is her life until she's decapitated by Perseus. Athena's judgment, the victim, Medusa, was disfigured and permanently isolated. Sorry, I flipped that, so stick with me. She was a virgin completely devoted to Athena, that is until Poseidon raped her in Athena's temple. The consequence, Athena's judgment, the victim, Medusa, was disfigured and permanently isolated, since looking at her was now literally petrifying, turning men to stone. This is her life until Perseus decapitates her, yet she persists. In 1975, Hélène Cixous recuperates Medusa as a feminist figure in her essay, The Laugh of the Medusa. Here she identifies the masculinist view of Medusa as flawed. It is the fractured, refracted, patriarchal gaze which makes Medusa so-called ugly. After Poseidon looks at her, everyone else must only look at her through a mirror, or for Perseus, through the glare of his shield. Poseidon triggers this distortion. It is his sin, not Medusa's. Cixous encourages us to look straight at Medusa and see that she is both laughing and beautiful. So what happens when the male stare recognizes a laughing Medusa? What does it mean when the male singers, composers feature female laughter on their records? Syl Johnson, in his song Different Strokes, opens with a high-pitched sirenesque cackle. This soul classic has been sampled almost 300 times in hip-hop. Prince's Unrequited Love in 17 Days is answered only in the bridge with a laugh. Andre 3000's She Lives in My Lap opens with Rosario Dawson's epic laugh. Then this same laugh is looped and weaved throughout the last minute of the song. So when we hear women laugh on records performed by men, often that laughter is confusing. It's like listening to the teacher on Charlie Brown. Womp, 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 womp. She's talking, but we don't know what she's saying. This is why it's critically important to consider reading the recorded music of blues women as feminist texts, to hear them tell it. Stereotypes of black women are designed to villainize black women, just like Medusa was villainized and made so-called ugly. The stereotypes are designed to distort, to blame, and to deny beauty. Cixous wants us to see a laughing Medusa as a corrective, as a way to alert the reader to the contradictions. So a black feminist reevaluation of a laughing Medusa helps us to consider how black laughter disrupts old narratives and alerts us to stereotypes masquerading as truth. For this, she is a trickster hero. But the viewer, the listener, must identify with Medusa or relate to her in order to see the genius of the trickster pointing out the contradictions. Otherwise, it becomes about the trickiness of the rabbit. It's like saying that the bunny is using its bunny powers to mislead, deceive, and conceal, instead of praising the rabbit for its escape. In the blues, the trickster is the one who laughs to resist self-destruction. In Ma Rainey's Louisiana Hoodoo Blues, we get a glimpse of High John the Conqueror, the human trickster hero in African-American folklore. According to Zora Neale Hurston, High John is the source and soul of our laughter and song. The sign of this man was a laugh, and his singing symbol, the drum beat. But in the blues, High John's reputation is mostly focused on his mystical powers. All through the blues, you can hear his name called outright, John Conqueror. Yet, in Ma Rainey's Louisiana Hoodoo Blues, High John is conjured with the wink and a smile of the wah-wah mute. Remember, High John's sign is the laugh. The wah-wah laugh punctuates the hoodoo reference Goofer does. Batman has his bat signal, High John has his laugh. So in many instances, the wah-wah isn't just a musical flourish. Both Ma Rainey's Jelly Bean Blues and Rockin' Chair Blues both feature the wah-wah to punctuate the same identical statement. He'll make you laugh, he'll make you cry. Here's Ma Rainey's Jelly Bean Blues.
He'll make you laugh, he'll make you cry, he'll drive those blues away.
Bessie Smith recorded her version 6 months earlier. Here's Rockin' Chair Blues.
He'll make you laugh, he'll make you cry, he'll sit right down and
In these two examples, the wah-wah echoes the performer. Yes, Medusa is laughing and crying on purpose. Next, Bessie Smith's Give Me a Pigfoot and a Bottle of Beer has been covered by numerous artists, including Billie Holiday, Laverne Baker, Nina Simone, and Sylvester. But Bessie's signature intro and or ha is missing. Her laugh is what helps to establish the mood and setting of the record.
25 cents? No, I wouldn't pay 25 cents to go in nowhere. Oh, listen, yeah, up in Harlem every Saturday night.
At this party, there's alcohol, guns, razors, marijuana, but Bessie conveys having a good time with no concern for respectability politics. Similarly, in Sinful Blues, Bessie punctuates her homemade kazoo solo with a laugh and a cymbal crash. She is not your stereotypical jolly, laughing mammy preoccupied with someone else's happiness. Her laughter resists other people's projections and forces the listener to look at her straight on and see that she is beautiful and laughing. Bessie's Kids. Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald they represent two pillars of jazz, both of whom credit Bessie Smith as a significant influence. Interestingly, a deep dive into Billie Holiday's catalog reveals she doesn't laugh on the record. On the other hand, Ella tucks her hee-hees and ha-has into her scatting phrases. Brent Hayes Edwards' essay, Louis Armstrong and the Syntax of Scat, has been helpful to think about how the range of wordless vocal strategies, the moan, the falsetto, the shout, have been helpful to think about how they convey meaning, but laughter is excluded from this list. Consider also that the 60s sounds like a cacophony of laughter compared to previous decades, at least according to the pop charts. The social upheaval of the 60s makes it hard to attribute the rise of laughter in recorded music to just one shift.
Laughing loud and hearty, deep inside I'm blue.
I'm sorry, baby, it's the end.
In contrast, early black performers have been excised from black popular history for laughing too much. George W. Johnson, Burt Williams, Louis Armstrong, as if performing this laughter were a sign of submission. This rejection obscures the trickster hero and partially explains why very little is written about High John's musical influence and lyrical presence. In this 1988 clip, taken from the symposia Facing Evil, Maya Angelou recites her poem, Song for the Old Ones. She challenges us to rethink our perception of laughter as submission.
They say, but sugar, it was our submission, and that made your world go round. They laughed to shield their crying. They shuffled through their dreams. They stepped and fetched a country and wrote the blues in screams. I understand their meaning. It could and did derive from living on the ledge of death. They kept my race alive by wearing the mask.
conclusion, Medusa has had to bear the burden of other people's projections, her genius belittled. So Medusa isn't really free until she can express the full range of her emotions without distortion or retaliation. If we revisit the original myth, maybe Medusa didn't actually turn the men to stone. Maybe they were just stunned by her story. Maybe she was just saying, me too.